Welcome to Decoding Devy. I am Brandon Hay, and you can find me on Twitter at HeyB3. And we are brought to you by the IDP guys. Please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube page. There's tons of content coming through there. So last week was just an appetizer for college football in week 0. There was around 8 or 9 games, but it was very exciting. And then this week we'll have the full slate. So let's go ahead and get into it. I'm going to review some of the games and players from last week. Review my DFS bets and prize picks, see where I went wrong, and then talk about Devy players and predictions for next week. So let's go ahead and get into it. So in case you missed it, Nebraska lost another close game. Scott Frost made some bad decisions. I thought that offense looked very good in the first half, and then it just fell apart, especially after he did an onside kick after they went up 11 points. Northwestern played very gutsy, and honestly, Fitzgerald are just outcoached Scott Frost, so the time is ticking for him. Western Kentucky brought in a new quarterback in Austin Reed. They did win the game, but it wasn't nearly as prolific as it was last year with Bailey Zappi. UNLV won easily, and Ricky White had a big day. He was in my DFS lineup, and we'll talk about him later. Illinois won easily. Florida State took care of it pretty easily. A lot of new players in North Carolina came to the forefront. And then Nevada also came out victorious in the week 0 games. So key performances, there's a couple North Carolina guys on here. Drake May went 29 of 37 for 294 yards, 5 touchdowns, 55 rush yards in his first start. I thought he looked very good. Obviously, if you hadn't heard, FAMU, Florida A&M, was missing quite a few players, especially one of their marquee defensive ends. So a lot of players were wide open, but Drake May, delivered the passes and looked impressive, was able to have a couple nice runs, one for a big gain, and then he was able to pick out the receivers and make plays. He placed the ball very well. There were times where he had to where he threw it and the receivers had to stop, but hopefully with more time he'll get more used to that. And then down here we have George Pettaway and Omarion Hampton. They combined for 152 yards and 3 touchdowns in 18 attempts. Most of that was from Hampton, but Pettaway had a touchdown also. Pettaway looks very good in the open field. Hampton is a bruiser. It's going to be doing the early down work. He didn't start. DJ Jones started, but it was only by name. It looked like Hampton got the most carries. Chase Brown, a player I like a lot at Illinois, only had over 15 carries 4 times last year. No problem with that. This game had 19 for 151, 2 touchdowns, 3 receptions for 16 yards and a touchdown, which is big because he only had 14 receptions last year. So it looks like going to be more involved. And, I think he's a player we definitely need to look at because he could move up boards. I think if he has a huge season, he might be able to move up to a similar spot as someone like a Dameon Pierce this last year, or maybe even a Michael Carter. With Northwestern, Cam Porter came back from an injury that took him out most of the season last year. He struggled at first with a fumble, but then he came back strong with 19 carries for 94 yards and a touchdown. But the main guy was Evan Hull with 22 attempts for 119, a touchdown, and 70 yards. So that's like a good 1-2 punch, but Evan Hull did get 60% of the snaps, and he not only showed his power, but some elusiveness. So that'll be interesting with Northwestern using those 2 backs this year. And then Toa from Nevada, he really carried that offense with 19 for 109 yards. So let's talk about this first full week of college football. On Thursday night, a pretty big one. Penn State plays Purdue. I think it'll be very, very interesting. Penn State has some new pieces. especially Katron Allen and Nick Singleton are two freshman running backs. And they also got Mitchell Tinsley from Western Kentucky. So they should have a good offense. It depends on what they can do through the air. But and then Purdue returns Aiden O'Connell. They got a couple transfers in there too. Tyron Tracy from Iowa in the spring game. He was playing in the slot, and he looked to get a lot of chemistry with the quarterbacks. So that's a very interesting game. I think Penn State will pull that one out. Then on Saturday, Oregon and Georgia. Someone that Georgia should be familiar with is Bo Nix from Auburn. He's the quarterback now at Oregon, new coaching staff. And then Georgia, brings back Stetson Bennett, and Kendall Milton should get the main start for running the ball. They have a lot of talent, especially at tight ends. But I think Georgia will prevail in this one, although since it's the first game, it might be closer than it would be later in the season, especially since it's at Oregon. Then Cincinnati and Arkansas play. It's going to be very interesting if Cincinnati can replace Jerome Ford and Desmond Ridder from last year. On their depth chart, they have Ben Bryant and Evan Prater at quarterback as an or for first string. I thought Evan Prater was going to get the start, so it'll be interesting what they do there. And also, they have 4 running backs listed as starters, and one is Corey Kleiner, the transfer from LSU. Arkansas returns KJ Jefferson, and Raheem Sanders should be a good 1-2 punch. Without Treylon Burks, they're going to have to replace that production. Jadon Hazelwood transferred from Oklahoma, but it will be interesting how they do that. And I do think Arkansas is going to win this game, but it all depends on how the Cincinnati offense goes with so many new pieces. Utah is going to travel to Florida. I'm very interested to see what the Gators look like with transfer Montrell Johnson at running back, who got a lot of play in the spring game, and obviously Anthony Richardson. He has a lot of hype coming out if he can stay healthy, and interesting to see if he really improves as an overall quarterback. Utah returns a lot of starters, including quarterback Cam Rising and Tavian Thomas. So just because of Utah's ability on both of the lines, it's probably have more depth than Florida. I think Utah will pull this out, even though that they have to go to the swamp. Probably the biggest game of the week is Notre Dame against Ohio State. Ohio State returns a lot on offense, even though they lost Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. They still have Jackson Smith and Jigba, Buka, Marvin Harrison Jr., Trevian Henderson. I think they're going to be able to score a lot of points. Question is, can Notre Dame keep up? They're starting a new quarterback in Tyler Buchner, who is a high recruit that's going to finally get his chance. Lorenzo Styles at wide receiver showed some good things last year. See if he can continue. And at running back, there's going to be a mix of Chris Tyree and Logan Diggs. I think Notre Dame's going to have to score with them. And also, Ohio State's defense got a new defensive coordinator from Oklahoma State. Will they be better? How quickly will they be better? I think they'll do enough to win comfortably, but Notre Dame might be able to put some points, and this will be one of my bets later on. Another intriguing game out of the ACC is Louisville against Syracuse. Syracuse has Garrett Schrader, who is a mobile quarterback, not a great passer. See if he improves this year, but they do have Sean Tucker, who has just been amazing his first 2 years. So it'll be interesting because the Sean Tucker really going against Malik Cunningham, and for Louisville, he's kind of my dark horse for the Heisman. Very elusive player, dynamic, throws a very good deep ball, needs to work on some of his inaccuracies in decision making. But Louisville also got some good transfers in Tyon Evans, running back from Tennessee, and Tyler Hudson, running wide receiver from Arkansas State. And they also have Jalen Mitchell and Trevion Cooley in the backfield. So I think there's a lot of weapons for Cunningham. I see him pointing that out for Louisville, and I see them as a dark horse also for the ACC. And then the last game I want to talk about is the LSU-FSU game. FSU won easily against an inferior opponent. last week. It'll be interesting to see if they can continue on that. They were able to run the ball very well. Quarterback and running back Trey Ward looked very good, and this will be LSU's first game. It'll be interesting because they have a couple transfers. Noah Cain from Penn State will be at running back. It'll be interesting what Kayshon Boutte can do. And then also the quarterback is kind of up in the air. Either Jaden Daniels, the transfer from Arizona State, who had a lot of promise his freshman year but has kind of fallen off, and Garrett Nussmeier, who has been there but had a couple of good games. But it'll be interesting what Brian Kelly can do with that team. So now here's some Devy players to watch. I already mentioned some for Ohio State, pretty much that whole offense. Stroud should put up huge numbers. Let's see how Travion and Jackson Smith and Jigba. For Jackson Smith and Jigba, it'll be interesting if he'll still stay in the slot, be moved around. So just see how that offense continues to grow. They just keep on replacing players. Luther Burden at Missouri. They lost Tyler Beatty from last year, who was their real focal point of offense. I'll be interested to see how much he gets early on. His tape is electric in high school, and I would imagine they're going to find a way to get him the ball. So I want to see how he does this first week. And then with Penn State, a couple of players, Nicholas Singleton, a lot of hype. And like I said, Katron Allen has showed some good things too. See how much those running backs play early on as freshmen. And Parker Washington, he had over 800 yards last year. They say he's going to take over the Jahan Dotson role. And, I just want to see how he does in that number one role. I think he's going to be very good this year and have a kind of jump up like Jahan Dotson. Already talked about Chase Brown. See if he can continue that. They play Indiana. See with a better competition than Wyoming. Then with Alabama, they play Utah State. Should be able to take care of them. But I want to see how they use the talented running back Jahmyr Gibbs that I love. He's my second-ranked player in Devy. He came from Georgia Tech. A lot of that, he's big in the dual threat. He's never played with this much talent at Georgia Tech. I want to see how much they really use him running the ball and in the receiving game. I want to see Bryce Young with these new Bama receivers. They have a couple transfers. One, Jermaine Burton from Georgia, who didn't get really utilized as much as probably they want, and see if some of those now sophomore receivers, that big recruiting class from last year, can really jump up. Already talked about Anthony Richardson, Florida. He looks the part, but kind of want to see if he can put it all together. Last year, he was more of an athlete playing quarterback. Can he really just show that he's a full quarterback now? He has all the physical tools. At Michigan, they're going to run the ball again. They have another couple of dynamic running backs. Blake Corum comes back. If he can stay healthy, I think he'll go well over 1,200 yards. He's going to be the main rusher. Then Donovan Edwards, I think they're going to use kind of like the Georgia used James Cook last year. Out of the backfield, he'll do some running, but he'll be really valuable in the passing game. I'm really interested to see how that offense goes, especially since they're going to split the time for the two quarterbacks the first two games in K. McNamara and J.J. McCarthy. USC has a ton of new players, transfers. Caleb Williams and Mario Williams came with Lincoln Riley to USC from Oklahoma. See how they do. And also Jordan Addison is there. See if that offense can really hit the ground running. A player that a lot of people are higher on than I am, Braylon Allen from Wisconsin. He had a great year last year, but he didn't necessarily have big games or play that much against the tougher defenses like Penn State and Michigan. So I just want to see if he continues that production this year. Ole Miss, Zach Evans, he's not going to get a full workload because they got some other running backs that transferred in. But I want to see how Lane Kiffin uses him, especially with them bringing in a new quarterback also. At BYU, Jaron Hall, could he have a kind of uprising or jumping up like Zach Wilson did? He shows a lot of nice things, but a lot of the same things that I'm worried about with Zach Wilson. So he doesn't see the easy throws. He can make the spectacular, but he needs to read defenses faster. I already talked about Malik Cunningham and Sean Tucker. And lastly, Will Shipley. He had a very good freshman season, overshadowed by Draylon Allen and Travion Henderson. But after missing a few games, he really came in and had some very, very productive time and was number one running back. I think with the passing game still up in the air, they're really going to utilize Will Shipley and depend on him. And I do hope that they give him more passing work because I think he's very dynamic, not only just out of the backfield, but you can split him out also. So there's some players to kind of look at. Every week I'll kind of do this review and also say players that we need to kind of watch out for. So here's some bets I like. Like I said, I like Penn State. They're a 3.5 favorite at Purdue. I just think they're going to have too much offensive power for Purdue. So I have Penn State there. NC State's at East Carolina. I like them at as 11.5 point favorites. Devin Leary is another kind of underdog that I like. Not an underdog, but someone that's not as high level or known as well. And I think he could jump up possibly to the top 5 in quarterbacks in the 2023 draft. He threw for 35 touchdowns last year. I think the offense will do very well against East Carolina, and that NC State defense is very good. So that's why I think they could be one of the teams coming out of the ACC. I also like Houston, a 4-point favorite at UTSA. They bring back Clayton Tune, who's a senior, and then they also have Nathaniel Dell, who's a dynamic, quick receiver, and they brought in a freshman that's already, impressing, and Matthew Golden. They did lose their running back, but I think they have enough pieces that offense will really be humming this year, and I think they're one of the G5 schools that could make some noise, kind of like Cincinnati did last year. And lastly, Notre Dame at Ohio State. Like I said, I have Ohio State winning fairly comfortable. I'm not willing to do the 17, but I do like the over of 59.5. I just don't think Notre Dame is going to be able to hold Ohio State down. Ohio State is going to score, even in their bad offensive games last year, which bad was still 500 yards, scored, 24 to 27 points. So I see them coming out strong, over 30 points. And then I could see Notre Dame getting in the 20. So I like the over in this game. All right, so let's look at the DraftKings lineup from last week. So I did some good things, did some not so good things. So as we can see, I was really high on Jordan Travis, and he didn't really perform as high for the amount that I had spent for him. But, Ward was a good play by me. You see 27 points compared to the 9.9 projected. Trey Palmer did pretty well, got above that. The big one was Ricky White, like I said, from Michigan State. And then they've been saying he's been uncoverable in camp, and he went off, scored over 41 points. Casey Thompson ended up a little over his 18, but he had much more room to do that, but really missed some throws in the second half. So I would say out of the 8, I'd say I hit on 4, so half. Obviously, Wilson didn't get any catches, which is surprising. And then Washington only got a few yards. I picked the wrong Washington. I should have picked the receiver, Marcus Washington, I believe, or it's in Washington or Northwestern. He had a much better game. So this is my Thursday DraftKings lineup. I like Jake Haener at Fresno State. I had to pay up for him, but I just think he's going to have a big game. And I wanted to match him up with Jalen Cropper and do that stack, but instead I did Josh Kelly, the second receiver. He had 52 catches and 778 yards last year, so I liked that. Went with Lou Nichols from Central Michigan. I know, that high points per game. He's playing a good Oklahoma State defense, but I still am hoping for him to do well. Hoping that they can get him some yards early on so they don't have to play catch up. And Antonio Brown from Northern Illinois, I really liked at that price point. He had 538 yards and 5 touchdowns last year in only 8 games. And in 6 of his 8 games, he had 70 plus yards. So I like that. I talked about Tyrone Tracy, transferred from Iowa to Purdue, because I am picking up Aiden O'Connell, because that Purdue offense really throws the ball a lot. They don't really depend on the run. So I wanted to get someone for him. So that's there, Tyrone Tracy. And then I like Parker Washington against that Purdue defense. I think they're really going to give him the ball quite a bit. And then lastly, I could kind of looking for a cheap price. And Javon Baker is the Alabama transfer. He's in the starting lineup per the UCF depth chart. So at that 3,500 price point, I wanted to play him because he's a starter for them, even though they're playing low-level competition. I see high upside there with them bringing in some new receivers, and maybe they can get that passing game going at UCF. And now my Saturday lineup. Quarterback-wise, staying in the state of North Carolina with Drake May versus App State. We saw that North Carolina's defense is not very good against FAMU, so that I think North Carolina is going to be in a lot of shootouts. So, and also I paid up for Josh Downs because he always performs, and if they're going to throw it a lot, he's going to get open. So I wanted to give that amount. Then with Devin Leary, I've talked about him. I think he's going to be very good. It's still up in the air, who exactly their go-to at running back is going to be. And I just think with that 35 touchdowns last year, they're going to lean on him. So when I talked about earlier, Marcus Golden, the freshman, as the second receiver for Houston, I loved his price point of under 5,000 at 4,900. Then running back wise, Donovan Edwards at 5,000, I thought was a steal based on how I think he's going to get a lot of work for Michigan this year out of the backfield, a lot of receptions. In this game, they'll probably split a lot of time against Colorado State, trying to get both running backs in there. And then Devin Achane, Texas A&M. He averaged 7 yards per carry last year and had 5 games over 90 yards, and that was splitting time with Isaiah Spiller. So now he is the main guy. And then we have Torrey Horton from Colorado State. So the coach of Nevada brought some players from Nevada, so he's going to be the kind of the lead guy there. So he had 600 plus yards last year, 5 touchdowns, greater than 90 receiving yards in 4 games, and that's with him being the second option, maybe the third option behind wide receiver Romeo Doubs, that is with the Green Bay Packers, and Cole Turner, the big target tight end that is with the Washington Commanders. And lastly, I went with Sims, the tight end for Bowling Green State. He had 41 for over 400 yards last year. He had 5 games where he had over 40 yards and had 4 or more receptions in 6 games. It's kind of at the bottom. I wanted to get someone that hit that price point, and also, they're probably going to be playing behind with UCLA, and could get a lot of yardage there in the passing game. So these are the price picks for last week. Went 2 for 4. Malachi Corley was very close. He just needed one more catch, and he just didn't get it. I was watching that game. It was very frustrating because he had 3 touchdowns. So you'd think he had more catches, but didn't hit that. The Mike Wright went well over on the fantasy score. Did a lot more fantasy scores this week. Tua went over on the yardage. And Casey Thompson really disappointed me. Didn't really run at all. I thought he'd easily get that 11.5 rush yards. So here is so here is my price pick props for this week. Like I said, I really like Jalen Cropper, and I did the receiving touchdowns 0.5, so he just has to score one touchdown. He's the main option for Jake Haener. I just think he'll get in the end zone against, a lower competition. Said I like Parker Washington, and I see him getting more than 5.5 receptions. Same prop as Malachi Corley last week, so we'll see if I hit on that. CJ Stroud, I like over the 29.5 fantasy points. Like I said, I think they're going to score a lot, and he's going to be involved in that a lot. John Reese Plumlee is the new quarterback at UCF. He transferred from Ole Miss, where he played some wide receiver. He's very mobile. He kind of fits what they want to do at UCF more, the 23 points fantasy score. I think he gets that, especially with his rushing ability. So I did the over. And for Pitt with Israel Abakananda, I think I really like him this year. He's kind of one of the sleepers for me too in this class. 52.5 rush yards. I did the over. They do rotate running backs quite a bit, but I just think he's going to be able to get that number. So that we went over the DFS, the bets, the props, some of the games. So that's going to be it for this week. Just make sure, because there's games Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So much college football this week. I'm so excited that it's back, and it's gonna be great. So I hope everyone gets to catch some games this week, and make sure to follow me on Twitter at HeyB3 and check out the IDP Guys YouTube channel. And I will talk to you guys next week. In a little, forgot to say this at the beginning. This will be coming out on Wednesday mornings moving forward every week. I know we've missed some weeks, but we're going to get that out every morning on Wednesday, so you have time to put in those lineups on Thursday and Friday and kind of listen and hear what I have to say about the different games coming up and everything. And also on YouTube, video, comment, or on Twitter, DM me or, tweet at me. Anything that you want to be talked about. Maybe there's a player you really like and you want an opinion, and we can talk about that in future shows. So I'll see you guys next Wednesday.